You also made the point that languages are very important in your historical research. Um, how important actually is knowing a new language, studying to do you study the language just to be able to read the ancient sources, or reading and writing and talking is part of it?
Yeah. I'm not a great linguist, I can say, but it is essential, really. I taught myself to read reasonable Italian. I can speak Turkish reasonably. It's one of those languages actually where it's easier to speak the language than it is to read it, and I slog through various passages of Turkish. As I said, the sources weren't great, and if I'd waited a year or two, I could have had Google Translate. But language is important. It's certainly very important, and one of the side things that are useful really is that I'm incredibly grateful for generations of PhD students who have translated or written material that has been relevant to what I've done. I would say I was very poorly equipped to set about moving into this world, but actually that's all part of the adventure really in having to tackle the languages, having to, I can read reasonable Portuguese now. I still can't understand a word the Portuguese say because they seem to swallow all the ends of their words. I'm sure they'll complain bitterly about that, but I love Portuguese as a language to hear. But I find it easier to read these languages. I can read Latin quite well than I can speak them. It's an important part of the, if you want to step out of your own culture, to try and tangle with this stuff. And so that's always educational, always interesting to me. It obviously takes up quite large areas of time. And I think I'm producing a book every 3 or 4 years, really, and there doesn't seem to be any way of doing it more quickly. And certainly I'm probably slowing down as I get older. But these are all an adventure. They're an adventure in reading. They're an adventure in discovering other people's histories. And I've been enormously gratified and humbled by some of the responses that I get from people from other cultures and languages. People in Portuguese who I think must know their history inside out, but are still enormously pleased, I think, that somebody is, Portuguese history is underwritten about, I think, by outsiders. And the reward that I get, actually, I get quite a lot of emails from people saying, I really enjoyed this book. It meant something to me. I've read it 4 times, which is probably more than I've read my own book now. And that's such a reward. It's like you're sitting in this room, or if you're lucky, you're allowed to go to Rhodes or, Lisbon or somewhere for a while. You're sitting in this room writing this stuff, like in your own echo chamber, and the reward is Giorgio, is like people like yourself would say that they really enjoyed the books. That really means something to me, actually, and it is an incentive to write because, unlike any other art form, like being a musician or a painter or somebody where people will actually look firsthand at your work, particularly being a musician. Writers sit in their rooms for a long time and go quietly nuts, really, as far as I can see. So this business of writing it's heartwarming to know that books have meant something to somebody else.